Hi and welcome to the Warlock's Tower. We've got a 40k battle report with Drukhari versus Astra Militarum. We're playing Eternal War. We've got 5 objectives on the table. So they are the skull markers you might see dotted around the place. So let's get into this. So we've got the Drukhari, played by Glenn, who's at Spurs for VR. So on my right he has a Razor Wing Jetfighter. He has a Venom with Cabalite Warriors with Splinter Rifles and a Blaster. He then has 2 Ravagers, each with Dark Lances. He then has a Raider with Witches in. There's a objective counter stuck in the front of nowhere. He then has a Raider with Cabalite Warriors with a Disintegrator on the front and a Dark Lance inside. And then next is a Raider with Incubi and an Archon and a Succubus. In the Raider with the Witches is also another Archon, so he's got 3 HQ choices, and then he has a Void Raven. After a couple of games, Glenn has realised that mortal wounds are absolute filth in the new games, so he's really keen to drop a bomb from his Void Raven and do some mortal wounds. He also noted that Mandrakes have Deep Strike, or whatever it's called now, and potential to do mortal wounds. So he's got some of those coming down, which brilliantly converts from some Empire Fanatics and some Sisters of Slaughter Dark Elf heads, so keep an eye out for those guys. I've been looking at Catachan, really like those guys. I've always got quite excited by the thought of fighty Astra Militarum, so these guys are strength 4. Their bulging biceps allows them to load tank guns faster, so on any vehicle, including the missile launched on the Scout Sentinel, I get to reroll 1d6 when firing a weapon, so for the amount of shots I get. So given that, I've got a Basilisk, I've got 2 Scout Sentinels there, each with a missile launcher. Then all the units of guardsmen are the same, so there's 10 guardsmen with a plasma gun, Voxcast and power sword in the building. They're hoping to sneak up and get that objective on the top level there. Behind them, the closest model to you on the bottom layer is an officer, and then we've got the Wyvern, and then we've got the Storm Sword. I've actually thought about this, and I need to think smarter. It needs to be deployed in terrain behind a wall, and I had obvious opportunities to do that, but 3-up save, toughness 8 just isn't good enough to be sticking around in the open for these fellas. Next, I've got another Scout Sentinel, again with missile launcher, Wyvern, 10 guardsmen with their plasma gun at the front there, and then 3 Le Mans Russ, all the same, battle cannon and heavy bolter. So the 2 on the right that have just been sprayed are just 3D printed, so I was pretty pleased with the way those come out. They need some detailing, but they're pretty cool. So yeah, chuffed with those. And then behind the middle tank is Sergeant Harker. Inside the big tank is 3 units of guardsmen, as I say, exactly the same as before, and 2 priests and Colonel Ironhand Strachan. So on to turn 1. And Glenn won the turn to go first, flew over with his Void Raven and dropped the bomb on my guardsman. So yeah, this is pretty good way to try and get turn one, try and get first blood. So he then pushes forward with his Venom, with his Cavalites, his Witches with the Archon in, and on the left the Archon and Succubus and Incubi. It's a bit of a close-up of the Void Raven, showing what a good job Glenn's done painting the thing. And then obviously the Flyer zooms forward in the middle. The Venom takes some cover behind the scenery. We are playing that if you're majority covered, you do get +1 to your cover save. I know that's not in the Warriors of 8th edition, but it just seems very sensible. And then those 2 nasty Dark Lances start winding up and taking some pot shots. So yeah, the bomb hits, takes out most of the unit, 3 guys left and a morale test to come. So that wipes the unit. Then he puts some shots into the left hand side, Scout Sentinel, and a ton of shots into Storm Sword. Does 19 wounds. I'm only just hitting on 5s. I'm nearly hitting on 6s. On 6 wounds you hit on 6s, so 7 wounds left on the big tank in the middle, but really limiting that shooting, and also looking inevitable that he's going to blow up next turn. On the right there, as you can see, there's another of the objective tokens. So yeah, my turn starts. I pile out with the guardsman, so I've done it right. So you can see Ironhand Strachan, who's got his plasma gun out, and then there's the priest next to him. So the plan is take out the witch's raider and then charge in. Give them a nasty surprise on how good these guys are at fighting. Key moment, put a ton of shots from Loran Rust. The reroll to the D6 is really good when you're shooting twice with those guys. So I was kicking out 9 shots each one, and so they chew through the Ravagers pretty quickly, which is really a big relief, but I still think it's not going to be enough to save my big tank. Shows you how important first turn is, because they did the majority of damage to the Storm Sword. Managed to take out the Raider, and the girls bail backwards into the cover, and yeah, I think they're safe there, but the guardsmen charge in. The priest gives them +1 attack. Ironhand Strachan gives Catachan +1 attack, and they're strength 4. So I rolled quite badly. He rolled well for his invul save, and they still died apart from one, and that one pops on the morale test. I didn't bother piling any attacks into the Archon. He's got a 2-up invul, so I took some wounds back from the Archon. But yeah, really good. He charged his Raider with the troops in it into my Sentinel, I think hoping to do the D3 wound one and pop it, but wasn't to be. They did another couple of wounds. He was unlucky this time with shooting, didn't quite finish off the big tank, and the Void Raven headed on out of harm's way for now, or so he thinks, with 3 tanks looking at him. The Succubus and Incubi leapt out, and the Incubi did a number on the Catachan. They may hit hard, but they're very much a glass hammer, so they got stomped badly. So, oh well, such is life. But the Incubi now take up residence in the crater. There's the other counter at the back there. So the tank, rest of the occupants pile out, so the officer comes down and they take up residence in the cover. There's the Archon still in that Raider, so there's some pretty nasty combat potential. The Incubi get charged by the tank with the stratagem, which allows me to hit on 2s. So it's only 3 attacks from the tank now because he's so limited on wounds, but that's still strength 10 minus 3 AP and D3 wounds. Obviously not relevant, but yeah, it's pretty powerful even as wounded as it is. And my thought is I'd rather charge in, and if it does explode, it's going to explode closer to him and take out some more Incubi. Shooting takes out the Raider, and the Archon scampers up to coverage, and then the rest of the shooting takes out the Archon. Eventually he rolls, I think he rolled quite early a 1, I think his second save he rolled a 1, which destroys his invul save, and then just piled all the shooting I could into him and took him out. So he's not the Warlord, but it was a good result. The tank does some damage and then takes no damage in return. Toughness 8, no good against Dark Lances, but pretty good against Strength 4 hits. I did roll reasonably well on my saves on a couple of occasions. Strachan and the priest run backwards, get out of the way. The Void Raven heads back to the back of the board. The Raider heads up out of harm's way. And the Mandrakes drop in on the right hand side. So There's basically 2 or 3 objectives which look pretty secure for each of us, and then 2 that look pretty hotly contested. So this is Glenn shoving forward, allowed his venom to fly forward by putting his mandrakes in the way. Pretty nicely converted. Given these essentially models Glenn had lying around, they look awesome. So yeah, he's a great painter too. The incubi skulk forward, take cover behind the building, leaving their bosses in the crater. And the mandrakes and the Void Raven roll really well and take out a tank in a turn. So I think he rolled 5 mortal wounds and then 5 normal wounds as well with the mandrake. So yeah, pretty good rolling. Popped some 6s and took it out. The other venom flies forward to, well, he's hoping to head up and claim the objective. Big advantage. Dark Eldar is so good. Drukhari is so good at whizzing around and just taking objectives. The Basilisk is dropped down to 1 wound. I now realise that I need to hold the objective with my troopers and push forward with my Leman Russ. So obviously this limits their shooting. I did debate pushing 1 Leman Russ forward, but the way he's been shooting, he'll take out that 1 and leave me set on the objective. So yeah, they both go forward. And my stormtroopers come down on the train on the far side of the table, manage to shoot off 1 of the incubi, but then subsequently get charged by a succubus and an archon, which, yeah, they're not close combat gods. They get wiped out pretty quickly, but they do chip a wound off the succubus, which I was pleased about. Actually interrupted combat with them. Leman Russ pushes forward to take the objective after they just shot the mandrakes off the table. 5 up involved doesn't last long against that amount of shooting, so that's good. But that then frees up the succubus and the archon to go hunting. The archon has a blast pistol, other than that they don't have any shooting, but he takes out the last wound on the basilisk with that. The Leman Russ pushes forward to hold the objective, and I push up to the top of the building with my last remaining guardsman, Strachan and the priest. There was a very stubborn Kabbalite warrior managed to sneak up there, put a ton of shooting. I think I put a whole wyvern, basilisk, admittedly hitting on 6s, into him. I put guardsman unit, Strachan, the priest. No doing. He just stood there. Eventually I took him out with the plasma gun, but that meant I couldn't shoot into the archon and succubus. But the Leman Russ on the far side pushes forward and holds that objective. Key moment was Glenn's venom flew forward and sat just next to the objective. Now I could easily get 2 models next to it with my tank and Strachan, and he was like, oh no. And I was like, he's like, I made a mistake. And I didn't realise till after I'd done it, but I piled all my shooting, and what he was hoping I wouldn't notice, he had 1 model there in the venom where he should have piled the guys out, so he had 6 models there, the 5 Kabbalites and the venom. Me being an idiot, I shot everything into the venom to clear the objective. The 5 guys popped out next to the objective, but fortunately I had enough shooting to take them down to 2 wounds. But that meant I held 3 objectives, Glenn held 1, and 1 was contested, so I took out the mission. But it was a stupid move on my part. I could have shot into other things and held the objective outright, whereas I ended up contesting it and wasting a load of shooting. But it was a really fun game, really mobile army. I think they're both very high powered armies. Astra Militarum, this isn't as good as I can make this army, certainly. I find working through how the stratagems interact with the orders, interact with the warlord trait. There's so much depth and possibilities in the Astra Militarum book. It's awesome. So I'm still getting to grips with it, but I'm improving all the time. Also, 3D printing and buying more models is obviously going to change things as well. I do have a plan on getting some Elysian drop troops together. I'm going to use my Cadians. I'm not very keen on the fluff of the Cadians, so I'm going to swap those guys out, 3D print some backpacks for the drop troops and like grav chutes, and then I'm going to get the beret heads from the stormtroopers and make those guys up. It's an interesting one with the amount of stratagems you can use with your command points for the Astra Militarum. It's really tempting to just choose for them early and use aerial spotters for your wyverns and all the rest of it, just to get the shots in early and kill as many troops early. But it was things like I could have easily moved a Sentinel in with Go Recon to claim this objective, and put a third model there and really hold it, but I didn't have any left. So although it feels like you've got an absolute ton of them early doors, it's actually worth hanging on to a few for those sort of movement things towards the end of the game. But really good fun game. Glenn's a great opponent. It's always fun to play him, and he's got a beautifully painted army, which obviously I need to catch up with and get working on these tanks. So yeah, thanks for listening. Comment below, like and subscribe.